They wore black to the ceremony at the Golden Globes, the biggest female leads in Hollywood, answering the dress code call of the new Time's Up collective and delivering rousing appeals to fight sexism and abuse in the wake of the Weinstein scandal. Stealing the show on a night of stars was definitely Oprah Winfrey, the winner of a Lifetime Achievement Award, who herself suffered abuse as a child, making hers a message to all the little girls watching at home. In a speech so moving that it has U.S. newspaper columnists branding her the frontrunner now to challenge Donald Trump for president in 2020. We'll be asking our panel about Oprah and the power of Hollywood in calling out abuse and changing attitudes. Also, whether France and other nations have their own storytelling industries capable of rising to the challenge at hand. Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at Hollywood and the Me Too movement. With us, writer and filmmaker Aurélie Lévy, the author of My Life for an Oscar.
Hello.
And more recently,
I have a show online called Home Within that deals with interior decor and interior life and all questions pertaining to interiority.
All right.
So quite a bit far off from Hollywood, but a compliment to Hollywood.
A compliment to Hollywood. Somebody who's also got a lot on the front burner in 2018 is producer and director Zachary Miller, a spy thriller and a documentary.
Yes.
All right. Well, welcome to the show. Zachary is also a member of Democrats Abroad.
Yes, for a long time.
All right. And with us from Geneva, Switzerland, Nargis Hilale, the author of Woman's Essentials, a box for the corporate world. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.
Thank you, Francois, for having me. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi.
The France 24 debate on Facebook and Twitter, the hashtag F24debate. It's a speech, again, that's spawned the hashtag Oprah 2020 and Oprah for President. The TV host, actress, and executive talking of a new day for gender relations.
I want all the girls watching here and now to know that a new day is on the horizon. And when that new day finally dawns, it will be because of a lot of magnificent women and some pretty phenomenal men fighting hard to make sure that they become the leaders who take us to the time when nobody ever has to say, "Me too," again. Thank you.
Zachary Miller, your thoughts on that speech and the content of it and the context of it. I mean, this is this new movement, which we'll talk about in a moment, had called on those participating in the Golden Globes to wear black for the occasion.
Yeah, well, Oprah's always been inspiring. She's had a difficult life. She's experienced a lot of things from the bottom to the top, really. And I know so many of my friends on Facebook have told me they cried after hearing that speech today. But then you also have the opposite reaction. We have a very polarized nation right now in the U.S., and you have people hating her, listening to the same speech. And so it is, it's a troubling time in America. And but Oprah has always been inspiring. She does have has a large cross section of people who support her.
Politics have always shown up at the Academy Awards or at the Golden Globes. This, though, we knew that it was coming, that this was going to be a politically charged and emotionally charged event.
Of course, it was very predictable. I mean, it had to be addressed in a massive way. It's also, it was an event everybody knew that people would be watching. And let's not forget that there are very incestuous ties between the media and Hollywood. They feed off each other. So I think the discourse that was extremely...
what did you think, for instance, when she at one point defends journalists in what's an obvious dig at Donald Trump? What was your reaction to that?
I think Oprah was the first black woman to receive the Cecil B. Award, so she had to make her presence known and talk about, make a speech to be remembered, and show that she was a force to be reckoned with. I don't know if she does intend on running or not, but I think anyone in her position who has that much power in the media has a responsibility to address what's going on in the media in the States, which is what she did. I don't think that was that unpredictable or very shocking. I think it made sense, and perhaps. What I took from her speech that was, I think, interesting is that she took out the whole argument of Hollywood and sexual harassment and talked also about the economical circumstances of some people. And she pointed out that saying no is a privilege of the privileged. And until, to some degree, you dissolve or fix or attenuate the discrepancies between rich and poor and the economical inequalities that women face throughout the world, you're not going to be able to sustainably fix this sexual harassment problem. They're linked, they're related, and that was, I think, the interesting part of her speech, in my opinion.
Now, J.C. Lally, is this a speech that's, well, very American, or does it have a universal message for you?
I think Oprah is definitely Oprah being the most influential woman, in the U.S. It is definitely American, and but at the same time, she is inspirational, and she has the ability, to take the power of the media in order to change life. Her shows are seen by 44 million people every week, and she even had a bill under her name against child abuse in '93. So it is very powerful, and but it is still something very inspirational.
And she's right. I think actually Oprah has more power in America than Hollywood does. Hollywood is made of artists who transcend the human condition, who talk about it, or who denounce things. But can you say that Hollywood movies truly affect people's lives? Not as much as actually Oprah has a direct effect on how people are going to behave and how they're going to vote, which is not something you can really say about Hollywood per se. Do you agree with me?
Narjis Halile, does Oprah Winfrey, because of the messages she conveys, does she have more power than a Hollywood movie to change opinions?
They say that she enabled to have 1 million extra votes, when she endorsed Obama. So I do believe that she has not only the media power, but also the political power. She is definitely a mogul, a media mogul, and very influential. But at the same time, her message is positive. She's a self-made woman who suffered, who's been herself, through child abuse, and she managed to take the positive thing and to become somebody, out of it. And she's always, since her shows went down in the 90s, she managed to self-improve and turn it more into the positive. And this is what she's keeps on sending as a message in her speeches.
Zachary Miller, we have right now in the White House somebody who's also come from the entertainment industry. He was the host of a reality television show, Donald Trump. The next time around, voters, will they prefer to have somebody who's a professional, quote-unquote, politician, rather than have somebody who's another outsider? Would they take a gamble on another outsider?
I think, yes, if the outsider is so radically different than Donald Trump. I think the population as a whole wanted change. And even after Obama, they still wanted something different, And I think right now I don't think it's going to be that much different in the next election. But I do think that somebody like a personality like Oprah with a huge recognition.
So you take her candidacy seriously?
Well, I don't know if I would take it seriously if she decided she was going to run. I don't know that she would want to run.
She said she didn't want to, but to add to your point, I think America is right now looking for a reassurance and a form of stability. I think the Trump has destabilized a lot of
people want to find their bearings.
I think they want someone settled and someone they feel is reliable.
So she qualified to be president?
She does, actually. Whether or not she'll run is another question. If I were her, I wouldn't do it because as you pointed it out, the country is so there's such a cleavage, there's such a polarized country that she is more effective remaining in a particular position and affecting the whole of the country than really,
Exactly.
Yeah. I'd have to wait and see. I'd have to wait and see how things are at that time. If I were to advise her, if she decided she wanted to run, it would be interesting to see exactly how the country is at that period of time.
Because there's no big names yet emerging.
There is no big names emerging, and we can't have, just another politician who's lackluster, who won't excite the population to turn out. Democrats could win every time. First, if the country wasn't so gerrymandered, and secondly, if everybody voted.
But look, we're here talking about this particular issue, and we're talking about Oprah so it shows how this woman just has a way of making you talk about her.
Yeah, it certainly is the case. And again, it was this issue of one of the calls for the Golden Globes on Sunday night was asking all of those who were up for awards to wear black. One of those who did that was Allison Janney. She won a Golden Globe for her supporting role in a TV drama called I, Tonya, and she proudly wore black.
I'm pretty sure everyone is wearing their take on a black dress, which is great. Listen, it's not about what we're wearing, but the fact that we want to talk about sexual harassment and inequality in industries across. It's a global issue. And since we're Hollywood people, it's in the spotlight, so let's talk about it now. I mean, after everything that happened last year, we can't not talk about it.
And Nargis Alili, this brings us back to what we were talking about earlier. Just how powerful is the Hollywood storytelling machine?
I think what Time's Up has done with the wearing black is a premiere never seen before, because usually during the red carpets, people are asked, who are you wearing? And actually, all the discussions were about what are you wearing, because everybody was wearing black in solidarity with the movement. The movement is great, but what would be extremely interesting is that the movement is actually turned into actions, and that this whole movement, incorporating Me Too as well, doesn't just stop right now, or not at least at the first step, which has been amazing about raising the awareness and being heard and believed, but that the words are actually turned into actions.
One of the criticisms leveled against this call was that, of course, men are going to wear black to an awards ceremony. They're going to wear tuxedos.
True. They actually, some of them were wearing black shirts and black ties. But they were also, even the discussions prior to the Golden Globes were very interesting, because it was not just about wearing, it was also about being all together, men and women. There was an amazing speech by Sterling K. Brown, who is an actor of the TV show This Is Us, and he was saying that finally he's acknowledging that men, they have been in this position of privilege, and by this movement it's raising the awareness. And he had this discussion with his wife where he asked how many men basically were sleazy in the workplace, and most of women around him, including his wife, were saying more than 50%, and it was an eye-opening for him. So he basically said that he wanted to be part of the solution. And this is interesting, because those were not the type of speeches or discussions that you would have prior to the Golden Globes. So again, I think it was pretty powerful what Time's Up has done.
More than 50% of the men sleazy in the workplace in Hollywood. Is that something you experienced, Tawani?
No, and sleaziness is a complicated word, because
it's not a legal term, for starters.
Well, some men can be a little bit, insensitive in the way they approach you or try to convey to you that they want to sleep with you. Does that make them harassers? No. So, there's a fine line, and America is a particular country with a particular set of puritanical rules and feelings about things. So I think to each culture, this word will vary. But to answer you said, is it going to change things really? I don't know. there's a cynic in me that thinks that this is also, you know, a phase and a moment that, again, because the media and Hollywood are so...
Well, before I ask you that, let me ask you, has it changed things? Because there was a piece last week in The Independent,
right,
the British newspaper, saying that in some of the Hollywood studios, the men don't want the door closed right now because they don't want to be alone in a room with a woman. What have you heard about the atmosphere now in Hollywood?
I think that'll probably calm down. I think the reality is Hollywood is an industry. It's a very lucrative industry, and it's an industry that entertains. Some would even say that it's sort of escapist, but it makes money, and the power women will have will be based on their leverage and the money they make or the money that they earn for the studios or for the producers. Do you see what I mean? So it remains an economical war before it's even a sort of sexual one, if that's even a term I want to be using. Do you understand my point? This is all relative to, you know, if movies start exploiting that idea or start talking about it, and if it earns money for the industry, and if the media follows with that and keeps sort of you know, talking about this story, it will persist. You know, the story will continue to be. Mm-hmm. If suddenly the story doesn't make money anymore, it doesn't sell papers anymore, it doesn't sell movies, or people don't want to talk about that at awards, or it doesn't entertain anymore, it won't be such a influential topic. Do you get what I'm saying?
There's a mercantile side to Hollywood that, even when we're talking about these important gender issues, comes into play.
Oh, absolutely. And the news and the media can change in a moment's notice. But what we've got to, you know, focus on is not letting Me Too become me only. You know, I mean, not all men are privileged. That's one thing I want to kind of push back at a little bit. And I want to say that it was important that Oprah also last night mentioned race, and she mentioned poverty. She mentioned, you know, her mom being what we used to call a day worker, which was what my mom did too. She cleaned white people's house. You know, that's what she did, and that's what Oprah's mom did. And we have to focus on all these things put together. You know, not just, you know, my being concerned about Black Lives Matter and you being concerned about Me Too, but we all have to be concerned about each other's situations. And that's what's really important. That's what's critical, because when all these things come together, then we are the majority. Then we have power. Then we can take over. You know, we can make a change when we're all working together. And that even goes down to me being concerned about Tennessee poor white folks in the Appalachia. You know, that's what Robert Kennedy did when he was running for president. He went to the ghettos. He went to the inner cities. He went to the Appalachians, you know, and tried to talk to these people about how they were being misled. And those same people are being misled now by the Republicans and Trump, you know. So only when we all come together can we really have a force.
We're going to pick up on that point. We have to take a very quick break. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate.
You Are Here, your program spotlighting French heritage.
Versailles, the Louvre, and the Mont Saint-Michel are all well-known stars of French heritage. But French genius and France harbors many other hidden treasures. The arts, gastronomy, architecture, as well as nature's wonders. Come along with France 24 and discover France's living heritage. From young apprentices to accomplished craftsmen, farmers to Michelin star sporting chefs, meet these people whose passion for their professions preserve and drive French heritage.
You Are Here on France 24 and France24.com.
Talking Europe, presented by Catherine Nicholson.
With all the main European news, debates between representatives of the best and worst performing EU member states, and exclusive interviews with major personalities.
Talking Europe on France 24 and France24.com.
Welcome back. Before we resume the France 24 debate, some of the stories Laura Cillier is watching for you in the newsroom. France's president kicks off a 3-day state visit to China in Xi'an, where Emmanuel Macron calls for European involvement in Beijing's giant One Belt, One Road infrastructure initiative. A minor cabinet reshuffle to re-energize Theresa May's team. However, an inauspicious start for the UK Prime Minister's choice for Conservative Party chair. It was tweeted, deleted, and then the tweet was replaced. Germany's most powerful union calls for the 28-hour work week. In business, Kate Moody will tell you how the pressure from the metalworkers at IG Metall could impact coalition talks. And Syrian regime forces pound two of the last rebel bastions, shelling and bombing the eastern Ghouta enclave near Damascus, as well as the northern province of Idlib. Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate, and we are looking at how Hollywood, how much impact Hollywood can have in changing attitudes. It was Hollywood where Me Too started, with the allegations that poured out against the influential producer Harvey Weinstein. It's now graduated, and we'll see in a moment, to what's become the new Time's Up collective. We'll tell you more about that in the company of Aurélie Lévy, writer and filmmaker, as well as Zachary Miller, producer and director. And from Geneva, Switzerland, Nargis Hilale, author of Women's Essential Box for the Corporate World. Welcome back to all three of you. Just before the break, Zachary, you were telling me how Oprah Winfrey made her appeal beyond just, of course, women. She even said that she praised men for beginning to change attitudes. One of the criticisms that's been leveled against Me Too is that in some instances it's become You Too, and that there's been kind of this blurring of the lines. At times, people have been found guilty in the court of public opinion for crimes that don't equate, or wrongdoings that don't equate, as you were saying, Aurélie Lévy. On the one end of the spectrum, there's rape, and on the other, there's inappropriate remarks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's, that happens, and we all have to be careful. Whatever movement we're a part of is not to only focus on that. That was my point. It's a way of dividing us, and it's happened forever. From the slavery times, when the only thing they could tell the poor whites that they were at least better than blacks, and that was a way to divide two groups that should have been working together. And so we have to be very, very careful when we have a movement and we only focus on that movement alone at the expense of everyone else.
Not to mention denunciation in general, which is a sort of very iffy sort of topic and subject. And
has the pendulum swing too far in the last 2 months since the Weinstein scandal broke?
Look, it's not for me to judge. I have no idea how, am I wary of it? Yes, a little bit. I think perhaps as a Jew, I'm always wary of any form of denunciation. But I think the internet is it's a very new tool, and it's been really used in some great ways. And in this particular case, it spreads like wildfire. So where's the line between something you talk about that is personal, that you choose to share with the rest of the world, and the sort of form of accusation that involves someone else in the public space? In the public arena.
Nargis Hilale, your thoughts, taking this, of course, now beyond just Hollywood, but how, whether you heard in part one of our discussion, Aurélie, worry that all this could die down?
I think there is a momentum, definitely, with the Me Too movement. The thing also is that it's not women against men. We have to be working together. It's about a joint movement where we both support the same cause. Not only just, on sexual abuse, but there are so many inequalities, as Zachary rightly mentioned. But if I'm talking more in the workplace, there are equal pay, gender inequalities. And yes, there is a momentum because we are raising the voice. We are talking about it. But we need to turn it into actions. And there are other things that governments, parliaments, UN nations need to do, like installing quotas. But there is also all the stereotyping that the media is portraying, that is playing a huge role as well in this. So we need to work not only on what is said and keep on talking about the movement, but we need to, now that there is this momentum, we need to take advantage of it and leverage it so that we change the status quo and make sure that there are other actions, not only in the media, not only in Hollywood, but across governments, across parliaments, across institutions, big corporations, so that there are actions that are taken out of it that will be making a positive change.
You mentioned things like quotas, wearing black on the red carpet, only part of the Time's Up initiative. Brian Quinn filed this report last week when it was launched.
From outrage to action, some of Hollywood's biggest female names have come together to fight workplace sexual harassment. On Monday, the anti-harassment coalition Time's Up was launched with an open letter and a full-page ad in the New York Times. Among the hundreds of prominent women in entertainment backing the initiative, the actress Reese Witherspoon and the producer Shonda Rhimes. But it's not just Hollywood's elite the group wants to protect. In their letter, a recognition of their privilege and a declaration of solidarity with working-class women who face sexual harassment and coercion as they struggle to make a living. The initiative includes a legal defense fund to help less privileged women face the fallout from reporting harassment, a push for legislation to punish companies who tolerate harassment or use non-disclosure agreements to silence victims, a push for gender parity at talent agencies and production studios, and a request for women in entertainment to wear black on the red carpet and speak out against harassment. The Time's Up initiative is just the latest reaction to an avalanche of sexual harassment and abuse claims in entertainment and politics in recent months. After investigative reports in the New York Times and the New Yorker revealed claims of decades of abuse by Hollywood heavyweight producer Harvey Weinstein, more victims have come forward against more abusers, ending the careers of actors like Kevin Spacey and TV journalist Matt Lauer. In December, Time magazine named the Silence Breakers, those who have spoken out about their experience being sexually harassed, as Person of the Year for 2017.
You were talking about economic clout earlier,
Right.
Aurélie Lévy. How do you get gender parity in things like, producers? How do you do it? You can't really decree it, can you?
Oh, no. That's a good question maybe for our friend. I just listening to this report, I really think that, again, saying no is really what this is about, the ability to say no. And it's funny because Dave Chappelle, who's a great stand-up comedian, American, made a few jokes on his show at New Year's Eve, and I think he kind of took the piss out of the whole situation, which was necessary to take off the steam also from this whole pressure cooker. And he said he was talking about the stand-up comedian that's been accused of sexual harassment, Louis C.K., and said, that a woman had accused him of masturbating while they were on the phone, and he said, you can hang up the phone too, So I think what he was pointing to is that the ability to say no, and I still very much believe that the ability to say no comes from what you're told as a child, what your parents tell you, how they raise you, how they behave with each other, and also your social and economical status and position. And so really, even before making all those laws, sort of working to fix the economical inequalities in the world and the discrepancy between rich and poor is probably the what needs to come first. Because going to see a lawyer or going to, get the counsel you need from that fund, for example, that legal fund, requires education. It requires, a knowledge and an assurance that a lot of women around the world don't have. So before all that, I would say,
Nargis Hilali, we've seen recently in places like Morocco protests against harassment. Picking up on the point just made there by Aurélie Lévy, what does it take for women to say no?
I fully agree with Aurélie. It definitely starts with education, and I also believe that the media play a big role, because when you look at the ads, Unilever did their study that was called the Unstereotyped Report, and they looked at the different TV advertising, they analyzed them, and they realized that only 2% of the advertising were showing and portraying women as intelligent, only 3% women as leaders. Basically, most of the ads were portraying women. They were basically related to toiletries, beauty products, and cleaning products, while the ones portrayed by men were more related to cars, housing, banking. And definitely, it is education, but unconsciously, the image that the media is showing plays a huge role and has huge impacts, and negative ones, on the way we would behave, because those are not breaking stereotypes, but more nurturing them. So it is definitely about education, but it is also about making sure that what the media portray is actually a reflection of the reality.
And on that score, on this side of the Atlantic this Monday, it's not Hollywood actors, but a prominent news reporter grabbing headlines. Carrie Gracie quitting as BBC China editor over the fact that she gets paid less than men.
I'm still disappointed by the BBC's response. The BBC talks about a gender pay gap, but what I'm talking about is not a gender pay gap where sometimes men and women are in different roles which explain the differences in pay. What I'm talking about is pay discrimination, which is when men are paid more for doing the same job or a job of equal value.
Nargis Hilale, pay discrimination, we're not talking about the downtrodden here. Does that extend all the way up the top of the ladder in companies?
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is definitely something we're seeing everywhere, in the corporations. This is something a lot of governments now, the UK, have passed a law that is going to be implemented in April to be more transparent in terms of equal pay, gender equal pay. Unfortunately, we women are judged more severely when we're looking at our failures, much more severely than men. And also, we do not have the same chances and opportunities. Even McKinsey report was saying that basically men are promoted based on their potential, while women based on their achievements and their results. So this is definitely a big issue in the corporate world. And I hope that the governments, are going to be much more active on that one, and that we will raise even more awareness about it.
The junior minister here in France in charge of equality was quizzed on this on the radio, Nargis, and she says she's in favor of whether a new measure that you have in Germany that allows women to find out whether male colleagues are getting paid more for the same job, making people's paychecks public. Is that a good idea?
I don't know if that's the answer. I think it's about the objective. It's about keeping the objective in mind, about making sure that women have the same chances and the same right as men in the workplace. I know that there will be a lot of debates, even on quotas, but at least, we women are the biggest minority. We represent 50% of the population, but we're still a minority. And there need to be discussions, there need to be actions, like, for example, the Secretary General of the UN, within 1 year, he managed to move the percentage of women at the senior level from 15% to almost 60%. That's huge. And there needs to be actions about making sure that we women, the same chances and the same right, and we are paid equally for the same job.
When you look at, go ahead, Aurélie.
Well, yeah, but this is a different topic. I mean, sexual harassment and job opportunity and equal pay. I mean, they look like they fit in the same box, but there is a nuance there, and it's a whole nother issue. I mean, gender equality is a.
But does one enable the other?
I'm sorry?
Does one enable the other?
Look, I don't... Just physically or naturally or genetically, I don't think men and women are equal. They're different. They're fundamentally different. And I think they need to be... It would be a pity to not pay attention to those differences and not sort of accommodate those differences. I think the end goal would be to accommodate both genders in how they're different, so that there's a form of complement. You see, I mean, women have kids, they have a different body, they have a different metabolism, they have pay is one thing, and it is crucial because we live in a world ruled by money, and so power is directly power, and independence and freedom and the ability to say no is directly linked to money. But gender equality and inequality is a different debate from the one that, from the one of just are women entitled to being harassed or aggressed or sexually abused because they're women. Do you see what I mean?
Well, one thing I wanted to also kind of go back to, you asked about how producers can make a change in the industry. And one thing, that always works, because it is about money, is giving production companies incentives to hire women and minorities. This is happens in some states, in some regions. They'll do this. I was kind of very disappointed in Governor Cuomo. A few weeks ago, he vetoed...
Governor of New York State.
Governor of New York State. He vetoed a program that had been passed in New York that would incentivize production companies to hire minority and women directors for their productions. And there still hasn't been a very clear accounting of why that happened, but it had been passed and it was vetoed by the governor. And these kind of things work. If that's your goal, is to make it a more equal and fair kind of thing, incentivize it.
But you put that positive discrimination at the level of the film school, so that
no.
Or you put it at the level of the production company.
At the level of the production companies, they would get there's always for regions, for shooting in New York, you'll get some incentives. For shooting in different areas, you'll get incentives. Just like a businessman will say, okay, I'll go to your city and I'll build a football team if you give me money or you give me some tax breaks. That works for business, and it can work for productions and producing of films and television to help level the playing field.
Narjis Hilali, you agree?
I do agree. And I also agree in a way with Aurélie when she said that we are biologically different. Absolutely. But we have the right to have the same chances and the same rights. When we women want to make the choice, to be working, and we have the same competencies, equal competencies, it's not because we're a woman that we shouldn't be paid as much as we deserve. And this is definitely something where companies, governments, associations need to act upon it. And definitely this is not something where women will fight on their own. Again, this is something where we together with men will be able to achieve something. And of course we need to take care of all the differences. There are also other actions like the paternal leave, where the men are also spending more time with the kids because they are more involved also in the household. And this is also something that a lot of governments are discussing in order to be able to reach, the objective of gender equality and equal pay at the workplace.
Right, and it's also very much an industrialized country kind of problem or issue. I mean, depending on what country you're talking about or what society, those, this discussion is not, has a different pertinence.
Narjis Hilali, how is the discussion different in the developing world?
I don't think it's very different. It's the same thing, as the Me Too movement, being different versus gender equality. I think the fact that we're raising the awareness is already the first step because, again, just talking about it, is not easy. I know when I wrote my book and I was just talking about the difficulties that we women are facing, on a daily basis, it was kind of a bit taboo because we could talk about it, amongst us, at work, but we would never talk about it openly. So just amongst women, but it's as if we were complaining. And again, it's the same, for me, the same approach as the Me Too. So we need to raise the awareness. The more we talk about it, the more we talk openly, because this is an issue in the developed and less developed countries. So it's the first step is definitely about raising the awareness. And the more, even the Lenin report, can you believe that in the Lenin report, men were seeing that basically we were reaching gender equality. So that's their perception, because if we don't talk about it, the perception is going to be totally different. But it is not the case, because there are a lot of microaggressions and things that we women are going through on a daily basis, and we need to talk about it. That's as simple as that.
Talking about it has certainly worked in this country. Perhaps heads haven't rolled at the highest levels, but police stations have reported a rise in something like 20 to 30% since the Weinstein scandal broke of women reporting domestic abuse. Zachary Miller, have you felt a Me Too effect here? Some complain that it's been understated in France.
Well, you know, just looking in the accounts of the newspaper and different things in media, it certainly doesn't have the impact that it has in the U.S. But I think there's been some movement. But not the way it has had in the U.S., I don't think.
Aurélie Lévy?
What?
Has Me Too been understated here in France compared?
No, I'm not a big fan of the balance ton port thing for many reasons. And, you know, I'm into words because I write, so this is a bit complicated. You know, I have my reservations about the whole thing.
No, but just how much the issue is on the front burner.
It's hard for me to gauge. I would say it's definitely less popular than in America, but it's also it's a subject that sells less in France in general. I think you know.
Right, that's definitely the topic.
I'll tell you why, because it's less taboo, and as we said before, I think the reason why this has spread like wildfire is because there was a real taboo behind it, and it was extracted from a society that's quite puritanical, and so that even helped the fire burn stronger. I think it's a little bit different here, but I don't know if I'm in a position to judge or really, you know.
It's certainly fodder for another discussion. Aurélie Lévy, I want to thank you. I want to thank as well Nargis Halile for being with us from Geneva. Zachary Miller, stay with us though. Media Watch is next.
Thank you.
And we say hello to James Creedon.
Hi, Francois. So lots of buzz and reactions online about the debate topic and the Golden Globes generally. So let's take a whip through without further ado. A lot of praise for Oprah Winfrey, as you would expect, for a speech that went down very well. A lot of people referring to it as a unifying speech, an empowering speech, inspirational. And that was the tone of, I think, a lot of the reactions online. Some even saying Oprah 2020, right? But you would expect... you would expect that would also be, there was also a degree of criticism, I suppose, for remarks of that nature. For example, stunningly unprofessional tweet. That was what was said of NBC because they apparently shared a tweet going in that direction. So as polarised as ever, I suppose, the social media landscape. Sorry, but Oprah isn't going to be future president. Some also reminding that there were some, I suppose, somewhat inconvenient photos that have resurfaced because indeed Harvey Weinstein was, as the New York Times mentioned, the elephant not in the room. He was there, he was not there, but he was, I suppose, the most important person there in some respects, because a lot of how people were dressed, a lot of the domino effect of what happened after the revelations regarding Harvey Weinstein, really, but that was the tone and the tenor of the entire evening. And this is the headline of that New York Times article, a Golden Globes draped in black addresses Me Too. Now, criticism for some of the men who were there as part of the ceremony for not actually mentioning Me Too or the other sort of slogan of the evening, Time's Up, I guess, on that kind of behaviour
in their
speeches.
Right.
So that was brought up by a lot of, this is USA Today, critical of that. There was also quite a few people on social media making those remarks as well. Not a single man who accepted a Golden Globe tonight spoke out about sexual assault. Wearing a black tuxedo is not enough. So there you go, criticism for men for not maybe being vocal enough. This is Natalie Portman, of course, a huge amount of comment about the fact that when she was handing over the gong for Best Director, she said, here are the nominees for here are the all-male nominees. So at that particular moment has become a GIF, and in fact a lot of directors who were up for nomination, the all-male directors, looked a little bit sheepish in that image. So certainly not an easy day to be perhaps of the male gender at that particular award ceremony. There were women who were criticised as well in attendance, such as this actress here for not wearing black. She had to, Blanca Blanco then said, look, the issue is bigger than my dress colour. So I think some of the criticism really was getting a little bit over the top. It seemed that you couldn't do anything or say anything without some degree of some expectation that you should position yourself in some regard. This is Barbara Mayer, a German model, who did this whole explainer on her Instagram account as anticipating that there would be a backlash, saying, look, I've chosen to wear colours, and I think that's a legitimate thing to do. A rare splash of red for this, for the Golden Globes president, Mayer Tatna, but somebody justifying that by saying she's born in India, so red is the basic black of India. So a lot of, I think, a lot of legitimate comment, a lot of appraisal of what's been going on social media, but also a degree of chatter and noise, I would say. This, I'll finish with this particular tweet. I'm so inspired by men wearing black to the Golden Globes, an event to which they'd normally wear black tuxedos. It's part of the storied man tradition of making the least possible effort but expecting credit anyway. I think that one's a little bit too much.
One thing for sure, I think women were kind of obliged to wear black.
Right.
Yeah. It's a club you seem to be having to be a part of now.
Right.
I don't know if you agree with me, but
Zachary Miller.
It seems to be the color of the evening.
Yeah.
The color of the evening.
Be a team player.
All right, and just very briefly before we leave,
yes.
that image that you showed at the outset, a lot of critics of Oprah Winfrey tweeting photos of her in the company of Harvey Weinstein.
Right.
Harvey Weinstein, who was ubiquitous. If you wanted to.
Everybody in Hollywood has been in the company of
Harvey Weinstein.
I've had dinner with Harvey Weinstein. So that is, and to be able to say.
But it does
Oprah,
raise the question of the hypocrisy of Hollywood, and I think it would be a little foolish for us to be having a debate without addressing it. There is a great deal of hypocrisy in Hollywood. It is a business based on image and storytelling and narrative, and we should be. I mean,
my point was that just because she's been in his company doesn't mean that she knew what his activities were.
Of course, but I think. The same way suddenly people are wearing black and you have to be part of this movement, I think of course there's a level of hypocrisy. People, do what they have to do.
Certainly a conversation will continue. The clock has run out. Our time is certainly up for us. I want to thank you, James. I want to thank our panel. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.